Welcome to Big Homeopathy. I'm your host, Sarah Thompson. Hi, welcome to Big Homeopathy. I'm your host, Big Homeopath, Sarah Thompson. Last week I talked to you a little bit about my journey as a mother, and today, as I record this, is actually my son's 13th birthday, and so it's on my mind. And I think I mentioned when I talked about raising my kids, the word unschooling, which is a term that sometimes people use for this sort of philosophical approach to uh, parenting and to engaging with education. But, I don't think of that what I do as distinctly education. I just think of living life so wholly and fully that it all becomes an armature enrobed in learning. And that's what I think learning is. The most valuable kind of learning that we do is that which we choose and chase because it's driven by our passions. And the education in the classroom that is most useful is the kind that inspires and intrigues and reveals the tools to pursue autodidactic learning outside of the classroom. And I think you've probably heard me say that 500 hours is just not sufficient to learn the breadth and depth of homeopathy as you're going to take it into the world as a practitioner. And that's no great insight on my part. And that's why we have to keep learning, and that's why it's so crucial to advance our skills in service that we do that. And when I was at Baylight in Portland, Maine, which I sometimes call the Center for Spiritually Transformative Homeopathic Study, I found that just the more I got into it, doors and windows would open above me, below me, on either side, that I just wanted to go through. And so I intend for this to be a resource, and one of the things I like to do here, in addition to sharing the research, is to talk about other resources. And what a joy it is to be a student right now when there is so much via the internet that's available to us. The lectures, at contacting these amazing homeopaths, listening to Kelly Callahan's podcasts and these interviews, and reading books and watching videos and taking courses online. It's just incredible. So it's a great time to be alive and to be doing this kind of work. And the book I want to talk about today is Volume 2 of Dr. Manish Basha's lectures on the organon. We talked about Volume 1 a couple of weeks ago, which covers aphorisms 1 through 70, which is the philosophical underpinning of Hahnemann's theory. And so Volume 2 gets into aphorisms 71 through 145, which is a deeper look at how we actually learn with an individual patient what is to be cured in the case, and how we actually learn what is in the medicines that's curative. So he takes us in this, the organon is a difficult work, and it's very, very important. And Dr. Basha takes us through the aphorisms 72 through 78, talking about the acute, chronic, and miasmatic diseases. 82 through 104, which get into the actual details of how to receive or to take a case, what you need to do to follow Hahnemann's directives. And then 105 through 145 covers the just crucial genius of this science of similars, where we test the medicines and prove them in healthy people to learn what they do so that they can be of service in people who are sick. And wherever you are on the radiant arc of homeopathy, every wave and every point emanates from this foundational work. And so it's so great to have lectures that help explicate it. And Dr. Basha's lectures are just really excellent. And Hahnemann himself did talk a little bit about what he thought maybe the mechanism of action of homeopathic medicines was, and recognizing the limitations of the tools of his time, and also just the primacy of assisting suffering patients with their quality of life over the chemistry and the physics. He sort of relegated it to a secondary study. And it's really it's a separate thing, just as historically in medicine there was a difference between the biology and anatomy of the human and the medical study of how to treat disease. There's still that distinction in homeopathy. But now with nano, we can learn so much more, and it's so fun. And this paper came across my desk. I'm going to look at the title for you here this week, courtesy of the Ontario College of Homeopathy and the Magic Pills movie. And it was published in 2015. It was put together by Dr. Iris Bell and a team. And it's called Extending the Adaptive Network Nanomedicine Model for Homeopathic Medicines, Nanostructures as Salient Cell Danger Signals for Adaptation. And it cites some of the research I talked about a few weeks ago, and I thought it'd be fun to explore it further because it cites a bunch of other research too. And it's really, you should read this paper. There's so much that's interesting in it. It's really one to read and be well versed in. It looks at both homeopathic preparations and nanoparticles that are not homeopathic. And I'm going to read this little part for you too, because it's a little outside of my area of expertise. It looks at the manner in which these little tiny things modulate gene expression, cytokine release, cell signaling, and cell stress mediators within what's called the cell defense response network, CDR. That manifests as disease when we see that, in natural pathology, looking at how these little things follow these same pathways, and that this, what might be a hermetic action, is in these same channels, and that you can see a distinct difference, whether it's with homeopathic medicines or with nanoparticles, these virus-sized things and smaller, that is very different from a bulk substance and a bulk action. So it's a neat study, and I'll link it below and, of course, in the blog. In addition to this discussion of the biological processes involved, there's also a discussion of manufacturing processes, because in homeopathy, and we talked about how it's the succussion that's really important, and that's the thing that's so often missed by the skeptics. And what we're learning is that succussion, one of the things that it does, in addition to this possible acoustic cavitation, is that little bits of silica from the glass vials get shaken off, and they bind with these materials, and this energetic transfer happens that's substantial. It's a thing. And different materials, glass versus plastic or metal, are going to have a different effect. And then the process of how the dilution happens and how water or ball milling takes place, it does make a difference. And it's important. I never am an advocate of top-down mandates and directives. There's a reason that things bubble up in a grassroots way. So I'm not advocating a top-down directive of manufacturing, but Hahnemann is very specific about the manufacturing process, and all of his study and science and art is based on this very specific process. And so it is important that we as practitioners ask for that transparency and information and distinction among these different pharmacies for how they do things. The Organon is our foundational work, and we need to be very clear about what its directives are and very rigorous in our defense if we're deviating from those things. The work that we do is too powerful, too transformative, too revolutionary to permit us to indulge in intellectual laziness, because it's big homeopathy, and it's going to be huge. I'll see you next week.